Hi guys, it is Dom here from Soundsphere. Just had the wonderful opportunity to chat to an old friend of mine, Joe Henley from Buddhist death metal band DHARMA, who I met during a brief visit while playing over there. Joe is a great guy. He's had a wonderful story, moving from Canada on a whim to Taiwan. He is a journalist, so he tells some very deep and intense stories as well around the community in Taiwan, alongside being a huge integral part of the punk and heavy metal scene over there. So we talk in depth about that, the bands over there, his own experiences, and so much more. I'm really happy we could shine a light on Joe's story. Many people have told it before, but I think we go quite in depth here. So I'm quite proud of this one. So thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for spending time with us, and support Joe and DHARMA if you can, if you're into Buddhist death metal or Buddhism as a whole, because we talk about the impact of that on Joe's life as well. So thank you so much to Joe for his time, and support the death metal scene in Taiwan. Go over there because it's wonderful. Take it easy, guys. Thank you so much. Cool. So, Joe, it is a pleasure to sit down with you. I have respected and admired you as a musician and as a person for many years since we first met. I am fascinated by your band, DHARMA, which we're going to talk about in a second. But you've got an interesting life in general. You know, you were talking to me off record there about being a freelance writer. You've tackled some pretty intense issues around, Southeast Asian migrant workers in Taiwan. What kind of, what sort of, trying to think of the right word. Possessed is probably not the right word. What motivated you to move? Because you went, you were a student, I believe, and then you finished your student, then you moved to Taiwan just on a whim, and then you're tackling these very intense issues, writing books. You've written books about it. You've obviously, it's a part of your work, and arguably part of your identity there. So, what made you kind of, when you moved, write about these very intense, very challenging, and difficult issues?
I think basically, like, I've just always been drawn to outsiders because I've always felt like one myself, like many people in the metal and punk community. Like, we were never the cool kids. We weren't the kids that fit in. We didn't wear the right clothes. We didn't listen to the quote unquote right music. We were the weirdos, we were the outcasts. We were the guys that were, well, speaking strictly for myself, you're with either your other outcast weirdo buddies or you're alone most of the time. So I was drawn to other people like that. People who just, for whatever reason, either by conscious choice or not, just don't fit in with the rest of society or are forcefully excluded. Like, say, in the case of the migrant worker stuff that I've done, that are consciously kept outside. And I felt those stories are important. I think it's the way that we move forward as a society in a positive and healthy way is if we know each other's stories, if we're not so much of a mystery to one another. So I wanted to, just in the most general of terms, help be a part of telling those stories so we can get to know each other better, so we can move forward together in a more positive way, so that we don't basically spell our own doom by means of what could be just very simple misunderstandings between each other.
Absolutely. And you talk about being an outsider there, and kind of standing up for the outsiders. I'm fascinated. I know you talked about it before in other interviews, but I'm particularly fascinated in when you first came to Taiwan and you're, as a Canadian musician, you moved here on a whim, like we said, and you created a network. You're talking about being an outsider, but you have well and truly ingratiated yourself into the community now. Obviously, I had the privilege of coming over there to play. Everyone was very welcoming to me, but it's very different, coming for a few days and feeling that welcoming to actually living there and being there. So what were the challenges, if any, that you had, not only moving, but also ingratiating yourself into the community? I can't imagine it was simple as just rocking up, being like, right, I'm going to be in a Buddhist metal band. everybody come in and everybody hang out. Let's do this. What was that like? Were there any challenges for you, or was it as simple as everybody welcomed you in with open arms and you cracked on and started creating?
As far as like first moving here, there were definitely challenges in that. Like like you say, like I did very much show up on a whim. My It was just recommended to me by an old university classmate who had lived here before, and she just thought I would enjoy it. And I didn't. I was looking for a little bit of adventure and something different. And so I thought, well, doesn't get much different than moving 10,000 kilometers away and to a place where I don't speak the language, I don't know the culture, I don't really know anything. I can barely point it out on a map. I got here in 2005, which is now shockingly pushing 20 years, 2 decades. Um, and some people, your readership or viewership, they might not be familiar with what things were like in 2005, but there's no real like smartphones. This is pre-Google Maps. I didn't even have a phone when I first got here. So in terms of not speaking the language, not having a digital device in my pocket that could just tell me where I need to go, what I need to do to translate for me, those all led to situations in which I was vastly over my head and overwhelmed, and definitely some late nights staring at the ceiling thinking, what have I done? I'm here. I'm came here with virtually no money. I had about $500 to get started with. I left myself no outs. I basically landed and burned the boats behind me in the harbor and said, like, I'm going to make a go of it. And so, yeah, I had no outs. I had no choice. Like, I had to make this work somehow. But in terms of the scene, it actually was fairly simple. Like I came here, I knew nothing about the scene. I didn't even know if metal or punk or heavy music was a thing here, which was foolish in retrospect. I mean, it was just pure ignorance on my part, admittedly. Um, when I show up, of course, there's already a thriving metal and punk scene here. And I did basically I just started going to shows, and a lot of times I was kind of the only foreign face in the crowd. And quite similar to your experience, people were very welcoming. They wanted to come up and chat. They wanted to know, why are you here? How did you know about this? Because at that time, again, 2005, 2006, when I started going to shows, there like wasn't really information out there unless you were really willing to dig for it. And it usually wasn't in English. You just really had to want to go and find it. So when I did find it and I did show up and I am the only foreigner there, people were very curious. Okay, like, where are you from? Why are you here? How did you hear about this show? What do you think about it? Like, you're from overseas. Like, how do our bands measure up against the bands where you're from? And from there, I mean, I again, very sort of fortune smiling on me type of situation. I was asked to join a band very soon. And as a vocalist, which I had never actually done before in any serious sort of capacity. I was at a festival called Formos in Taipei, and guy, long hair, metalhead looking guy, just comes up to me in the crowd and says, "Hey, like, you look like death metal vocals," because I had hair down to my hips back then, very much looked the part. And there was kind of like a very brief moment where I was like, well, no, like, I've never done that. I can't do that. But I just found myself saying yes for some reason. Like, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, no problem. Like, what? Just tell me when and where. Like, let's do this. Because I think in the back of my head, there was just a feeling like, okay, I might fall flat on my face and fail, but I'm 10,000 kilometers away from home. Like, anybody I ever knew, anybody who ever knew me, if I don't want them to know about it, they're not going to know about it. Because like, this was just when like social media was just getting, this is the MySpace days, if anybody remembers MySpace.
Oh yeah.
So there wasn't like the prospect of like really somebody getting it on video and uploading it. Like, hey, like, idiot foreigner fails at being a metal vocalist in Taiwan. Like that was really a thing. So it was just like, well, let's give it a shot. So that welcome that you felt over those few days that you were here, basically extend that by about 2 decades.
That's
And that
lovely.
has that has been my it's ongoing. Like it's still going. There's still like people who are very much taking care of me and being very very nice to me here and treating me so well. And so I've always tried to pay that back because I know I owe everyone here in the scene for welcoming me and bringing me in and embracing me and helping me in countless ways. So that's something I've always tried to keep in mind.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And it's so wonderful to see how you've been accepted, but how you've also thrived, there. And I would, I would recommend the scene over there to anybody, based on my knowledge of a few days. But yeah, I think you're a shining example of 20 years deep into how welcoming the community is and how great the heavy music scene and the punk scene is there. And that brings me on to DHARMA. Obviously, you've received critical acclaim globally now for a very unique style of band. Obviously, the brainchild of Jack, Jack and Andy, but I know Jack Tung from Jack's Place and our time there. What tell me about how you get involved in a band that is setting Buddhist mantras to death metal. This is mind blowing. And obviously, hundreds of thousands of people know how mind blowing it is that have viewed those videos and seen you live. This is not the average, not that I'm saying anything's average about death metal, black metal, whatever scene, but this is it's an interesting concept. So how do you get involved in this? I'm going to ask you about your interest in Buddhism, in a little bit specifically, but these guys have this idea. You get involved. Tell me about that. Are you like, yeah, let's do it, Buddhist mantras, let's go? Or are you like, hang on, wait a sec, mind blown kind of thing? Tell me about that.
Well, again, going back to like 2006, like I came here, I joined my first band. We were called Revilement, just a basic blood and guts, Cannibal Corpse-esque kind of death metal band. And that was with the man you mentioned, Jack Doong on drums, who is kind of basically the godfather of extreme metal drumming here. He was the first drummer here that was doing like blast beats and things like that back in the day. And now basically any drummer here in the extreme metal scene, he has probably taught, or he has taught somebody who has taught them. So he was my drummer. And like, again, just fortune smiling upon me that I happen to be in a band with this guy who is already so well established here and so well connected, has his own venue, has his own rehearsal space.
Such a wonderful space as well. Let's just get that out there. Such a cool space too. It was amazing.
And he was also, unbeknownst to me at the time, a very actually devout Buddhist.
Hmm.
And with Revilement, he actually wanted to do what we're doing in Dharma now. This is 20, almost again like 18 years ago. The other two guys, and we had one song where we took a mantra, translated it into English, and made a death metal song out of it. And that was kind of as far as the other two guys in the band were willing to go with that. They thought it was weird. They thought it didn't fit. They were just kind of like, okay, like out of respect to you, the elder statesman of the band, because respect for elders here is a very important part of the culture. We'll let you have one. You can have one. That's it. And so we had that one Buddhist song, and but that was where the kind of the seeds were planted, and ever since then, Jack was always trying to find musicians to do it. Like he wanted to do a whole band where it was basically like Nile is with the Egyptology stuff, but with Buddhism. And he kept trying to explain it to people that way. But for some reason, it just wasn't landing with people. They just couldn't picture it. They couldn't hear it in their heads. So eventually, around about 2018, 2019, he finally basically just hired an ex-bandmate of his from another project, and that's Andy Lynn, our guitar player. He was also with Jack in a band called Demise back in the day. Another just basically, blood and guts death metal band. But he just said, look, like I can't really find anybody that's willing to do this. I'll hire you to do some demos with me so we can show people what this is going to be all about. So then we'll have something concrete, something that people can listen to. And Andy, yeah, just in his own home studio with Jack kind of acting as producer, basically, just telling what kind of vibes he was going for, how to work in the traditional instrumentation, the symphonic elements, and all of that. They came out with, I think, 3 or 4 songs that they could show to people. And right about 2019, after about a year of writing, that's what Jack brought to me. And I was blown away with it right away. Like I was just like, oh my goodness. Like I was listening to the songs over and over and over again on repeat. And he asked me if I wanted to be a part of it. And I said, well, I'm not Buddhist. Does that matter? He's like, yeah, like don't worry about that. We'll figure that out. Whatever, however that's gonna go, that's gonna go. We'll figure that part out later. But do you just want to be the vocalist in the band? Let's just get the people in first, get everybody together, and we can see how it goes. So it was just a product of my friendship and partnership with Jack. We've now been playing together for the better part of 2 decades. This is our third band together. We played with you when I was doing Stench of Lust, which was a very, very different project. And I was a very different, still the same person in some ways, but a very different person back then, doing very different things on the stage and saying very different things, a very different message in that band. That was more of a kind of a anal cuntish, like fuck off grind band. And if people are not familiar with it, don't worry, because you're not alone. Did not achieve nearly the reach that say that DHARMA has yet, and for very good reason. Yeah, just a product of friendship and collaboration with Jack for so long. I'm so grateful that for our friendship.
Yeah,
And that he's even he's seen me at my best and at my worst. And with Stench of Lust, he saw me a lot when I was definitely not at my best.
right.
And he still had the belief in me where he asked me to front his band. It's his, everything's on the line for him. It's his message, his reputation, his idea. And he's asking me to go stand up front and be the delivery person for it. So I don't take that for granted.
No, he's an amazing, very welcoming person, very kind, and that's in my brief experience, meeting him and talking with him. So respect, of course, to Jack. You and the rest of the band as well. You mentioned there the reach that DHARMA has had. I think it transcends metal in the fact that, of course, Buddhism is such a globally renowned thing, and obviously it means a lot to all of you. But the dynamics in that band, I think if you're not a fan of metal, you can still find something in DHARMA because it's so dynamic. The musicianship is wonderful, and this, I'm aware this is my opinion. So somebody kind of consuming this in whatever way, obviously people will take it differently, but I think there's so much crossover appeal to DHARMA. Are you surprised by the hundreds of thousands of views on YouTube? Are you surprised by the global acclaim that you've had? That obviously you've done numerous interviews about it globally as well. Are you surprised by that, or are you kind of, how do you feel about the global acclaim of DHARMA, as it were?
No, I'm not surprised. I'm shocked. I'm shocked by it. We had no idea how this was going to land. I knew I liked it, but there's a lot of things I like that people don't like. I'm into stuff that 3 or 4 people are into. And I was very, very much prepared that this could be one of those things, and that would have been fine. I've always done things, I mean, selfishly, like for myself. If I like it, I'm enjoying it, I'm getting something out of it. That's what I'm there for. for a lot of people, like it is for a lot of people. I mean, this is, although I do go to traditional therapy, this is also my therapy, another form of it. Um, but yeah, like once we played our first show here, opening for Marduk, um, Swedish satanic black metal band. And although Marduk did not take a particular shine to us at all, put it that way, um, which I never really expected them to anyway, but that's okay. The crowd there was very very receptive, very. They were definitely like watching us and very curious, and it was, but they received us very well. It was very warm, and thankfully we did a like kind of a proper multicam soundboard audio kind of shoot for that. So we got a few videos out of it with proper sound and everything that we could edit and get out to the world. And so once we had those out there, yeah, that's when it started to have a little, like, I won't say snowball effect, but kind of a slow burn where it was just like more and more people were picking up on it. Media was picking up on it. Different websites around the world in different languages. It was just like, every few days, we have our group chat, and it's just like, oh man, like this site from Italy just picked it up. Oh, this site from France, and all the, eventually, like the metal injections and the metal sucks of the world, those sorts of names picked it up. And not just metal media, like just various newspapers, LA Times, the Helsingin Sanomat from Helsinki, CNN, all kinds, BBC, which is bizarre for me. Like, because I've been and still am, like I say, I'm a guy who does this for me. And, being in the Taiwan scene, doing it for the, say, few hundred of us in the scene here, we all know each other and we're all basically doing music for each other. And then all of a sudden this comes out and it has a reach way beyond what is familiar to me. I'm still not used to it. I'm still like, you want to talk to me about my band? Like, okay, sweet. Why? Like I'm always questioning it. Like, and like still, like this is still happening. Like, I'm afraid. I'm not afraid. Um, I'm always thinking like, okay, like these 15 minutes, they're going to be up like any second now. But for some reason, it keeps going. So I'm just going to ride it out for as long as it goes, and keep trying to spread our music as far and wide as I possibly can, because I do believe that there's a message to our music, and I know what this whole thing, like not just the music, but the philosophy and the faith of Buddhism has done for me in terms of my life and my peace of mind.
Mm.
And if it can do something similar for other people, that's part of what I owe, towards everyone that has helped me, towards Jack, towards all the people of the Taiwan scene, and everyone who has given me like multiple chances over the years to make something of myself, and to make all these crazy dreams that I had as a kid um, come true relatively late in life, if you want to look at things in those terms.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's interesting. Like, and we'll talk about that. I've got 4 or 5 more questions now, Joe. I'm fascinated by your story. It's lovely to sort of sit down with you and sort of talk it out with you, really. You mentioned that, Buddhism. You weren't a Buddhist. You weren't practicing Buddhism when you started this band. I've done a little bit more research just through my own sort of counseling practice here, in terms of how Buddhism can support people in a therapeutic context, things like the Four Truths and stuff like that. So I'm kind of developing my understanding. Now, What was it like? So Jack says to you, you say, I'm not Buddhist, is that a problem? Jack says, no problem, we'll figure that out later. We'll figure that out later. So what was it like? Were you resistant? What you mentioned Buddhism's done a lot for you. So can you go into a bit more detail about that?
Yeah, like when I first joined, I wasn't thinking like, oh, I'm going to join and I'm definitely going to become a Buddhist. I thought at first, basically, this is just another band. I'm just fronting a band. It just happens to be a Buddhist band. But of course, we have a Buddhist nun in the band, and she asked if I wanted to come and do some formal study, and I did think that was important. I didn't want to be. I thought it would be very strange and very disrespectful if I just went up there and was espousing all these things that I didn't actually understand or believe in. I had studied Buddhism a little bit informally on my own before that, but just the very, very basics of it. And just having lived here for so long, of course, Buddhism and Taoism are so prevalent, and you're never more than a stone's throw away from a temple. Of course, you pick up things here and there. But at the start of the band, Master Song, who was with us then, and then she later had to leave due to some health. She suffered a stroke, sadly. She's recovered well now, but she just was no longer able to perform. But she took me to the temple where she was actually a teacher, and I studied with her for 4 months, learning more of the basics of Buddhism, the basics of meditation, and it was during a time which was also happened to be just the confluence of you know choices that you make throughout your 20s that bleed into your 30s. And as you start to get older, you start to realize that consequences become more and more dire. At least they did for me, in terms of drinking, mostly for me was a problem. It was becoming way too much of a lifestyle, becoming way too dependent on it. And of course, being in metal bands, it's always encouraged. Um, Not in a way where people are trying to hurt you. It's just always there.
So it's part of the culture, right? It's a
It's
culture,
part of
yeah.
the culture.
Yeah.
You're out to have a good time, have some beers, and do whatever else that you do. And it's anarchic. Like you're supposed to rebel, and part of the rebellion is getting messed up. Like fuck society, fuck everything. I'm just gonna go out and get annihilated. Which later in life, you start to realize that doesn't really prove anything, and it's not helping me. It's not doing anything positive for me. But it had led me to a place where depression was creeping in. Uh, of course, as you get older, the hangovers start to become multi-day affairs, and it just eats away like any sort of progress that you've made from Monday to Friday. When you go out on Friday night and you basically drink your way through till Sunday, all those positive things just kind of get erased, and you have to start all over again on Monday. Now, of course, one of the precepts of being a Buddhist is not ingesting intoxicants. You don't have to follow that. I mean, I'm not a monk, and I never want to present myself as such to people. I'm what they call a lay person in Buddhism, somebody who follows Buddhism, practices Buddhism, but not the hundreds and hundreds of precepts required of being a monk and being a formal practitioner of it.
Mm.
But I did want to be as authentic as possible, and it was time for a change. So after the 4 months of study were up, Master Song asked me, and she said, look, it's okay if you don't want to, you don't have to. What matters is what's in your heart. But if you would like, I can, they call it taking refuge in the three jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. I can give you that, and you can formally become a Buddhist. And I thought, yeah, it's time. It's time for me to embrace this thing that has been placed in my path, which I believe it's been placed in front of me for a reason. if only my own personal, well, for lack of a better word, salvation, like just to save myself.
Mm.
To not talking about in the sense of say like, oh, my like immortal soul, but literally to stop myself from going to a place where I might decide I don't want to be here anymore. I might actually end things.
Yeah.
So I did. I took refuge in the Three Jewels. I stopped drinking entirely and doing anything else illicit. Just put it that way. And yeah, that was the start of feeling much better due to making different lifestyle choices, but then also embracing meditation as a lifestyle, mindfulness, and basically, if you look at Buddhism, I mean, if you really just boil it down, it's just a means of being at peace with yourself and the world around you. I mean, it's
Hmm.
nothing more. It's just how to live a peaceful life with without any of the distractions or trappings of the material world that we're all embroiled in.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I still am, of course. I'm not a monk. I haven't renounced. You can see all these possessions around me, CDs, vinyl, books. I'm still very much
Yeah.
embroiled in the material world, and in many ways still a very materialistic person, but I'm a much more peaceful materialistic person
Yeah.
because of this whole journey.
Yeah, yeah, I really appreciate you sharing that stuff with me, Joe. It's fascinating to see how you've developed and what it can do. It's certainly very, very interesting to me as I get older and try and understand myself and my own process, things like my disability and stuff like that. And Buddhism's been very useful in my brief learning. So just to hear from your own experience there, how it's changed your life and for the better, it sounds,
Yeah.
it sounds like is great. So thank you for sharing that with me. I wanted to touch on something you said previously in a previous interview around the scene as well. We talk about kindness seems to be a theme in this interview, and again, just welcoming and again, being well, having good people around you. You referred to the scene there as dynamic in an interview previously, and I wanted to get your viewpoint on where the scene has come from and where it is now. Obviously, when I was there, it was again very, very welcoming. I was very, very ill that day. I have no idea how I got through that set, but I did, and everyone was very supportive and welcoming. But what I'm trying to say is, from you as someone that's lived there, lives there, works there on the ground, what's how have you seen the scene how have you seen the scene change when you say dynamic, what does that mean? Because again, as someone that's been there, great, beautiful venue, great scene, welcoming people, but for someone who's consuming this outside that's never been or maybe interested to go, tell me about the scene. Is it shows every night, good vibes all the time, beautiful, brutal music everywhere? Where are we at with the scene? How has it progressed and developed?
When I first, like 2005, when I first got here, Taiwan like wasn't on the map for the global metal scene. A lot of people were like me; they knew nothing about it, and I only found out about it because I came here and I jumped into it. I dove in head first. But for a lot of bands, like a lot of international bands, they hadn't been here. They knew nothing about it. There was only a handful of bands at that time that had actually been here. I think Dark Funeral was the first international band that came here, and that was like in the early 2000s. And then there was a few years where there was kind of nothing. No bands were coming here because there weren't the type of promoters that were knowledgeable about the global extreme metal scene and knew who to bring, or had the financial resources to bring them over, because Taiwan being an island, you have to fly everybody in, and even if they're just coming from Japan or something, like it's expensive. um but then the bands that were did start to coming, like just slowly, like a little trickle came in. Like one of the first international shows I saw here was Norther from Finland. They came through, and again, like they came through because they went to Japan. Somehow they found out who to contact in Taipei to come over. And these bands that would show up, they would just get this massive reception from people here because people were hungry for it. The fans were here, just nobody knew they were here. But when the bands actually came, people were so hyped. It's like, oh my God, like these awesome bands are coming through. The shows were amazing. The reception was amazing. And so all these guys, these Dark Funerals, Northers, whoever else was coming through at the time, they all go back to wherever they're from, and they're like, oh my God, like if you go to Japan or Thailand, like on tour, if you go to Asia on tour, go to Taipei. You'd be stupid not to go to Taipei. So then more and more shows start happening. We start getting established promoters. It starts getting more professional in terms of venues, in terms of sound quality, equipment, everything. It just starts growing by leaps and bounds. So although, the every other country, most other scenes in the world had, say, like a 20-year head start on Taiwan, they made up ground very, very quickly. And that, of course, when international bands come through, kids go see the bands and they get inspired. They're like, oh, I didn't know what I wanted to do before. I want to do this. I want to do what they're doing. And this is the level that I need to be at in order to do it. Because these acts that are coming through, obviously they're well established, they're professional, they're some of the best at what they do in terms of musicianship, songwriting, everything across the board. So that just compounded upon itself. It just built this desire among the local bands, like, because conversely, like, there was no bands coming here. There were also very few Taiwanese bands that were playing out. Again, because it's expensive to get out. You got to fly out. So like Thonic was the first major band here, and mid 2000s they were huge here. But then all of a sudden Sharon Osbourne discovered them somehow, put them on Ozfest, and they go to the States for like, it was like 68 or 69 shows in 70 days, like this insane tour. And that, they come back from that and they're 10 times bigger, 100 times bigger than they were when they left that one tour. And everybody sees that and everybody says like, oh, okay, we need to do that too. We need to play out. We need to go see how we measure up against the bands in the States, bands in Europe, bands in Japan, bands in the UK. So that was inspiring. And ever since then, just slowly but surely, bands were doing what it takes to get out, which involves a lot of sacrifice. Like when you're first starting out, you can't go to some promoter somewhere and be like, hey, we want to come play. So like, you'll pay for our flights, right? You just get laughed out of the room. Like, we don't know you. Like, yeah, you might be good, but nobody knows you here. So, if you want to pay your flights, come over and play. Sure. We'll rent a venue. We know somebody who has a floor you can sleep on or a couch. But the bands here, they said, okay, like, well, that's what we need to do. That's what we'll do. And, like with Revilement, that's what we did, for 10 years. We played, I think, 9 or 10 countries, mostly just in Asia. Like those tours where you're sleeping on the floor, sleeping on the couch. Somebody's got some pizza for you after the show. But that's, that was the introduction to that world for a lot of Taiwanese bands. And now it's like a lot of scenes everywhere. There's ups, there's downs. But the shows are a lot more regular, like, any given month, probably every weekend there's a show somewhere. And pretty well supported. And of course, when international bands come through, we've had a spate here now, we've had Suffocation come through. As I Lay Dying was just here. Arch Enemy is coming next week. And to go back 20 years, it was like, okay, we've got one international show this month. When's the next one? Oh, 3-4 months from now.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Now it's a lot more. Now Taiwan is absolutely on the map. And there's still a lot of bands that are coming here like for the first time, which is great because, again, they get that huge reception. They go back wherever they're from. They tell 10 other bands, you got to come here.
Yeah. Yeah,
So that's the like the type of experience that we want to give people when they come here.
yeah, it's so cool, man. Again, we'll do a couple of touristy questions, to finish up. But yeah, like I think if anybody, consumes this, like just it's so welcoming and so supportive of people in that community and beyond as well. From what you said, not just in music, but just again, the it's just a nice bunch of people. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Outside of
yeah.
music too, you know, which I think is, something to say at the, as we finish this out. Um, One of the things I wanted to squeeze in before we do the kind of plugging bit, where I'm going to ask you to promote some stuff, is I saw an interview where you're not fluent. You have kind of, bits, yeah, bits of the language, right? So for anybody who wants to come, who's maybe thinking, all right, I'm thinking about this, but what's it going to be like? What are the barriers? Obviously, again, we were there for a few days. Everybody, we were lucky and very privileged that everybody, a lot of people were speaking English. We were very, very lucky. And I always say, when you go to a different country, it's a privilege that, to be able to communicate in that way, So what, you know, for you, as someone that's been there for 20 years, do you need to speak the language? How do you, you're in a band, you communicate with people every day. Are there any challenges there? Are there any language barriers? Or are you good? Are you good?
Me, I can definitely get by day to
Okay.
day in the
Okay.
language. I'm not gonna lie and say I'm fluent. I'm absolutely not. And I should be able to speak a lot better than I do. Um, but you'll find that the experience here for anybody who's like just say coming over, whether you're coming over tomorrow or anytime soon, even if you don't speak a word of Mandarin, people here are so friendly and accommodating, uh, patient. Um, they will whatever they have to do in order to help you, and if they can help you, they will help you. They will make sure you can get to where you need to go. They will, if they can't, they will call somebody who will. I mean, it's happened to me. Like when I was first out here, when I didn't speak a word, and I was be like desperately lost somewhere, and I'm trying to explain this to somebody who doesn't really speak English, but they can see that I'm upset. They can see that I'm in some sort of trouble. They're like, okay, hold on. I have this other friend who does speak English. Let me get him on the phone. Let him get him you on the phone with them. It's pretty amazing. I mean, I can't really think of places where that happens with such readiness and such frequency that it does here. I haven't been everywhere in the world. I've been to a lot of places where people are incredibly friendly and helpful. But I want to say honestly, this is a special place. This is a very special place. And if people come here, and I do encourage anyone who is, whether you're in a band or you're just traveling, come check it out. Come, and if you're a metalhead, presumably most of the people who are going to be reading this are into metal in some way. Try and time it around the time when there's some kind of show going on if you can. Come to a show. Come meet the people. I guarantee you're walking away from this with at the very least a great story, a great show. You're probably walking away with some really good friends that are gonna be in your life for a really long time too. So I mean, it's just you can't go wrong, man. You can't. I know I
Yeah.
sound like the Taiwan tourism board here, but seriously,
Yeah, man, absolutely. Again, like, I still, there's people that saw us at the show that got in touch, and like, obviously, again, to know you a few years later is really cool to see how you've done and what you've been able to do, and again, how passionate you still are for the scene. So I think that's changed through here. So thank you for sharing your love, for Taiwan and for the scene. A couple more questions then to finish up though, Joe. Is there a message you have for fans of DHARMA, fans of death metal in the UK, that Canada, back home, across the world? a message for people that have supported you through your life, through your bands, and will continue to do so wherever they are. What is your message for the people that, fans of metal that have got behind you and will continue to do so?
I mean, those people are the reason, a major reason why I'm still around. I mean, I don't say this lightly, that I was a kid, okay, who dreamed of what it might be like to play one show. And I was afraid to tell anybody this dream. Because I thought people would just laugh at me. Because, like I said before, I wasn't the cool kid. I wasn't the kid people would look at and say, "Oh yeah, that guy, he's looks like he should be fronting some badass metal band or something." Like I was a dork. I was a nerd. Nothing wrong with being a nerd, but I wasn't what anybody would expect to front a band. But that was my dream. And for a long time, I thought, it's just never going to happen. And I had made my peace with that. But for some reason, Taiwan and the people here gave me a chance to do that. Not when I was a kid, like most people are when they front their first bands. I was 24 the first time I stepped on stage. And now, at the age of 41, thanks to people spreading the word about our music, I'm here talking to you in the UK, who somehow I had the privilege of meeting years ago, has also heard about my band, wants to take the time out of his day to actually talk to me so he can write a piece so more people can know about what I do, what we do. I mean, if you don't feel anything but gratitude for the privilege of this happening to someone like me, who never ever believed that this would be possible, I don't know what I can do for you. So, like, to anyone who has ever watched our videos or listened to a song on Spotify, or taken it one step further, actually picked up a CD or something, um, I hope it helps you the same way it helped me. I hope at the very least it took you to a good place, a better place for those few minutes that you listened to the song. Um, I hope that, like me, whatever it is that's out there that you're looking for, I would say just keep looking. As long as you're looking, you will find it. And it doesn't matter how long it takes. I am a senior citizen in this scene, comparatively speaking. I don't feel like it, but I can see myself in my camera here. I can see the hairline that I have. I can see
I think you
all the
look
very
good, man.
smooth.
I think you're good.
I,
You're doing all right.
but you know, thanks to the people who allow me to keep doing this, I don't feel a day over 16. And I feel better than I did at that age, because I feel like I can be 16 now, but without the massive insecurity, without the feeling the need to get loaded to talk to people. So this is a very long-winded way of saying, if I have any message for people out there who listen to us, I hope it instills a sense of hope in you, the same way that has instilled a sense of hope in me. And that's my mission going forward, to take what has been given, this gift that has been given to me, pass it on to other people who need it as badly as I did.
Beautiful, man. Yeah, I feel inspired. I was inspired when I first met you. I'm inspired now. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day. We're going to do the plugging bit, the journo bit, right at the end of every interview. Have I done my job properly? Is there anything you would like to plug or promote as we finish up today?
Um, I mean, we actually don't like have any new music coming out right now or anything that I can. We just have the old albums. I mean, if people want to check us out on Spotify, like we're on all the major platforms,
Yeah, Bandcamp as well. So Bandcamp in there.
Facebook, Bandcamp, Instagram. If you just search Dharma Band Taiwan, you'll find us. We have a Japan tour coming up. Actually, that's not announced yet. I mean, we did announce that. We did say no, we did
it's
say we're going, but we
it's
we haven't said
coming.
where.
It's coming. Okay.
This is the worst promo ever. No, I mean, yeah, if you yeah, just look us up on Spotify, YouTube, wherever you consume music. Check us out. Hopefully, there's something there for you.
Beautiful, man. Beautiful. Joe, thank you so much for making the time. I've loved catching up with you. It's been amazing.